How's it going, everybody? Adrian here for TGO Radio. It is November the 21st. That's a Saturday. And as always, I'm joined by my esteemed co-host, Kato Sepp. Hello, Kato.
Hey, I've missed this.
Yes, it has been a wild month for me. I've been working on a crazy essay. This single essay for this one elective took all of my time. It took more time than any of my other classes combined, and it meant that we did one show over the past month. And I'm sorry about that, but I'm thankful to be done the essay, and here we are.
No, when you told me each time, like, I'm not going to be able to do the show this week, my month's been crazy too, so it's good. It's fine. But we're back.
We
and
are
that's
back.
what's important.
And we're under a new name as well. So just to clear up some confusion on terms of what's going on with the naming scheme, we're going to be calling this now TGO Radio, or the Gaming Observer Radio, instead of the TGO Podcast, simply because the daily updates that I produce every day with the news and everything, I also refer to that as a podcast, even though it's only 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how much of it you listen to. And so, this 60-minute show is just going to have a more distinct name that we can refer it to.
That should just be our thing where we change the name literally every single week to something else. And we just announce it, never refer to it as anything,
Yeah.
It's fine.
It's just a weekly show with the two of us, and the name is fluid.
Yeah, whatever we come up with in the moment, it'll be great.
This was probably a really bad month to actually have to go away, because a whole lot has happened in the last couple of weeks. You might have noticed that we've had some new consoles launch, a whole bunch of video games come out, and obviously us being able to talk about that would have been nice. But nonetheless, this is our opportunity to finally catch up on all of that, because we didn't talk about it here on the show, but we also haven't really talked about it with each other. So this is a great opportunity to catch up on all of that. The new consoles are out. The Xbox Series X and S are out. The PlayStation 5 is out. A lot of people talking about it. A lot of people sharing their tracking of these devices, because they're just so extraordinarily hard to get a handle on. But as you've been, I know you didn't plan on buying a console, but as you've been watching people talking about it on social media, as more information has come out about them, has anything changed your mind on that front? Do you have any plans of trying to get one soon, or?
No, I don't think so. And I think that's something I've kind of been measuring, as I've been hearing people's reactions. Like, is it necessary to get something right now? Is it necessary to get a PS5 right now, or a Series X or S or whatever? And everything I can tell, it's really cool. And the people who really wanted it and, fought in line for it, are enjoying it, but there's not really anything that makes it a kind of must buy at the moment. So I'm pretty comfortable not having one at the moment, but I do want a PS5 in the future. So
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I think it's a similar boat for me. Like, I wasn't planning on buying one, and I think I think that's has more to do with my life situation than the games themselves. Like, if even if it was like a really strong lineup on all sides, then I probably still wouldn't be getting one. But I will say the size of the Xbox Series S, basically just being a book, is like really attractive to me, because that's something you could take traveling with you, and that's a possibility of my future. So if my Xbox One, which is kind of up against the wall right now in terms of how much longer it's going to stay alive, I think, if that ends up conking out, then that's probably where I'll go. But yeah, I mean, it's just it's exciting to see everybody talking about it, right? Everybody's so happy.
yeah. Yeah, well, and the Series S has been kind of the surprise, surprise runner-up for me that I've noticed is a lot of people are really loving the Series S, especially, well, primarily with Game Pass, because of the way it's playing games, making them look a lot better. It's relatively cheap, and like you said, it's really portable. I think that's great. It seems to be getting a lot of great attention. I'll be really curious to know how that translates into sales. And it's not something for me because I don't have the Game Pass, but like, yeah, if you're gonna be traveling and you love the Game Pass, I don't know, it seems like a no-brainer. It makes it look gorgeous, and the hardware is intense. The specs are really impressive.
Yeah, the Game Pass really has been the thing for them, right? Like, I forget the exact
Yeah.
statistic, but in terms of the amount of people who got the Series S, or I forget the statistic, but anyway, the attach rate between the Game Pass and the consoles themselves are actually really good. So yeah, it's really cool that they have that kind of to leverage, where, you know, the PlayStation 5, like, obviously they have a lot of brand recognition that a lot of people fall back on. People want the PS5 just because they've had every other PlayStation, and the PlayStation exclusives are the place to be. And Demon Souls, right? Like, Demon Souls alone for a lot of people, or the upgraded version of Miles Morales for a lot of people, is a reason to buy a console.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's nice at least that they do have the Game Pass, because they don't have Halo Infinite.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the Series S in particular, I don't even think there's a point in buying it if you don't have Game Pass or don't have any intention of getting Game Pass. They're just it doesn't seem worth it, and the price drop isn't worth it if you're not if you're going to be buying, like, you know, games and whatnot, physical games or digital. Well, you know what I mean, retail games.
Yeah.
Talking is hard. Um, yeah, so that makes sense. I believe that that attach rate is really high, especially with the Series S. But even with the Series X, I think the Game Pass makes that worth it. Just because of the increased hardware, being able to play your 360 and Xbox One games on the new hardware, which I've heard makes quite a bit of visual difference. I haven't been able to see much myself as far as comparisons, but I've heard it makes a pretty big difference, and especially load times with some of the original Xbox games are like non-existent. Um, yeah, and then PS5 seems to be if you want the exclusives that we all know are going to come out. So
Yeah, that's I've actually been seeing that firsthand, because you know, my friends from middle school, high school, I stay in touch with them, and like, there's my best friend, and then we have like another friend who's always, you know, kind of hanging out with us, and it's been an interesting thing where my best friend wants to get the PlayStation 5 simply for Spider-Man, right? Like, that's his thing, or any other of those games. But convincing them to actually go and get a new console or to invest in the gaming ecosystem, they're gamers, but they're not like us, right? Like, they're not plugged in, they don't know what Hades is, right? Like, they're not plugged into the gaming world. And so for them to actually go, okay, now it's time for me to invest in, you know, this entertainment medium, simply me going to them and saying, hey, $300 for the console, and then an extra $15 a month, and you're gonna have all the games that you're ever gonna want. It's a great deal for them.
yeah. Yeah, meanwhile, I just really wanted to pick up an NVIDIA 3070 and had no luck with that, so my new computer is not coming anytime soon.
Sad.
So, yes, sad face. We were both my wife and I were sitting on Best Buy's website on the morning of launch, and trying to get it, and that site was just having none of it. So yeah,
Well,
if anybody wants to sell me a 3070 at street price, that would be great.
um, also, it looks like your prediction in terms of them not having enough stock for Christmas also came a little true, as more and more people are getting the notice that, hey, your shipment is going to be coming a little late, or hey, we ran out of stock, or hey, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of people might not be getting this in time for Christmas.
Yeah, I'm guessing most it's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough to get it before Christmas if you don't already have it ordered or something. It's going to be rough.
So there you go. There's the new consoles. Anything else you want to say about that?
No, I mean, we haven't gotten to try them ourselves, but yeah, I mean, it sounds like everyone's having a great time. So if you got one, you know, awesome. Let us know. I really want to play Miles Morales, and I haven't gotten it for PS4 yet.
So there you have it. The next thing that we want to talk about here is this major leak, I guess, or is that what you would call it, a leak or a hack?
Well, it was a hack. Yeah, so Capcom, if you've kind of noticed, some of the media has actually been kind of quiet about it, and I'm wondering how much of that is trying to not make copycats. I don't really know. That's my conspiracy theory. But yes, Capcom did receive or they did get hacked, and apparently a group tried to blackmail them for money, and presumably, I mean, we don't know for sure all the details, but I mean, it sounds like Capcom didn't pay, which good for them. But it means that this group released a whole bunch of Capcom's information, kind of like the Sony movie hacks quite a while ago. So, I mean, it's terrible, and I think we are both in agreement that hacking is bad, and this is not a good way to reveal games. But
Yeah.
we did get several game reveals, at least rumored, and I do think it's worth being aware of that. these are like internal plans based on various documents. These are in no way official confirmations of
Yeah.
these games. Somebody could have had it written on their calendar because they really wanted to pitch this game, and that doesn't mean that it's actually being made.
Yeah, my
Um,
my understanding is that like they got their hands on like the budgeting plans of these games, so they were
mhm,
budgeting for this game that might be coming out in 4 years, and I think there were numbers for both amount of money put into it up to this point, and then the amount of money they intend on spending on it, and then anticipated revenue of the game after it comes out. So these are games that, if the leaks are true, that
mhm.
Capcom has put a lot of thought into. However, it's also like every studio puts a lot of thought into a lot of things, and there's so many projects that we never hear about. So to have these internal ideas of what the games are, their release schedule over the course of multiple years,
Yeah.
this is by no means a promise or a concrete lineup.
Right. And I mean, several of these games could be canceled.
Yeah.
There are some in their schedule that are 4 years out. So it wouldn't be unreasonable at all for these to be canceled during development or delayed or anything. But yeah, we did find some of their plans. So I was gonna say, it looks like Capcom is planning well more Resident Evil. Surprise, surprise. But they have several Resident Evil titles in the works. It sounds like there's a multiplayer battle royale Resident Evil game that they've been talking about, which hopefully if we're getting games canceled, I hope that's one of them. I don't know why, I'm sorry, I don't know why
Yeah.
Capcom still thinks multiplayer Resident Evil is a good idea when it has failed so many times, but they just keep trying over and over and over again. Anyway, I guess if you're really wanting a battle royale themed around Resident Evil,
Listen,
it
I'm
sounds
not
like that's
gonna.
the thing.
I don't have the history with Resident Evil, so I'm not gonna pretend to, understand that. But as far as I'm concerned, if they get the right team in there, that's such a strong IP for them right now. And if they can make it work,
It
I
is.
would love to see it.
It is, but you have told the story before about how you played Resident Evil once a long time ago with your dad. You went and got a Resident Evil game.
That is
That was
true.
Resident Evil 5. That was the one multiplayer Resident Evil game that you guys picked up and immediately dropped it. I do not think that's a coincidence.
But that I think that has less to do with the brand and more to do with the specific gameplay loop of that game, which was very much
Yeah.
designed for one person instead of two. So, if they
Okay.
come in with a new concept and they say, let's do this properly as a battle royale first with the brand attached onto it, then maybe it could work. But yes, I also understand what you're saying.
That's very optimistic of you. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure I don't have the names attached to the synopses, but I believe that this is Resident Evil Outrage. Is this battle royale one? More interestingly, with Resident Evil, I think they are planning a Resident Evil 4 remake, and it sounds like this may include VR support, which would
Ah.
be interesting. They did do Resident Evil 7 with VR support, so it wouldn't be completely unreasonable to expect. And so that's pretty cool. There is another Resident Evil here way far out in 2024 that they're calling Resident Evil Hank, and I'm
Hmm.
not sure what that's about, but um,
Maybe
yeah,
maybe there's a character in Village that we don't know about yet.
it could be. And there is a kind of secret character in many Resident Evil games called Hunk
Hmm.
that's shows up frequently. I don't know if maybe that's just a coincidence that the names are similar. Um, I don't know, but it's
Okay.
4 years out, so honestly, they may not even know yet. They may just have this name, Resident Evil Hank, and it's very possible that that's a project
Yeah.
name or something like that. But that's what they've got for Resident Evil. They do have some other stuff here. Allegedly, there is a Dragon's Dogma 2 in the works for 2022, which would be pretty neat.
I've never played Dragon's Dogma, but that's a game that has like been on the backlog for years, and I just never started. And because all I ever see is people talking about how good the game is and how much they would love to have a sequel that's just a little bit tighter, because I know the game itself is a little janky. But yeah, that's I think a lot of people will be excited for that.
Yeah, I mean, Dragon's Dogma fans are fairly niche. There aren't a huge number of them, but the ones that are out there, yeah, are really passionate about that game. And I've never played it. I believe it's like a Souls-like, isn't it?
Yeah,
Or
from
maybe
what I understand, it is pretty difficult in that sense, and kind of it's reminiscent of that. And it's also like I'm trying to think of a comparable game that's kind of janky. I don't know. I've seen some gameplay. It's not like the tightest experience.
sure, maybe like Gothic or something, or like Elder Scrolls, I guess, for
Yeah.
those. No, I mean I don't think it plays like Elder Scrolls, but
Yeah.
the jank,
Yeah.
yeah, that's something people talk about all the time. Um, yeah, so I mean that's good that it's getting a sequel because I don't believe those games ever sold that well. We did get a Netflix series not that long ago, an anime. I don't recall that doing super well,
I
but
totally forgot about that, but yeah, you're right.
yeah, yeah. So they definitely haven't forgotten about it. Capcom has been pushing stuff out. They did a kind of director's cut in Dark Arisen um, with that game. So I don't know. I think they really wanted it to succeed, but I don't recall it ever actually doing that well. So it's cool that they're at
Yeah.
least talking about doing a second one. Um, and then we do have confirmation on Street Fighter 6.
Ah.
Uh, so that's I shouldn't say confirmation, but I mean we all knew that Street Fighter 6 was going to come eventually. This is not news to anybody. But they do have it down right now as Q3 of 2022. So sometime closer to the end of the year of 2022. Which actually is further out than I expected. I was actually kind of expecting a Street Fighter 6 pretty soon because 5 has been not as successful as they'd hoped.
Yeah, it's had a rocky road in terms of not just like in general, but also within the community itself.
Yeah. So that's actually kind of surprising to me that it's that far out, but maybe they're really trying to work hard on it, make sure that it's tight and has the kind of esports backing. Because I think 5 has picked up in the esports scene, but you know, not as much as they probably hoped. Um, yeah, some other things just really quick. New Monster Hunter. There was some talk about Monster Hunter potentially, or Monster Hunter Stories 2, which is coming out on Switch. There's talk about that coming to PC.
Okay.
Uh, that's I think right now it's only announced for Switch, but they're talking about bringing that to PC.
Yeah, there was
Uh,
a sorry, there was an interesting situation with those the two games that they announced in Monster Hunter. They only announced them for the Switch, which made it indicate that it wasn't like they really hyped these games up, but it's clearly not the next Monster Hunter World because or equivalent of it because they're just releasing it on the Switch. So if they are coming to other platforms, that would probably make a lot of people happy.
Right. But they do have in this hack also Monster Hunter 6.
Hmm.
I'm sure that's probably not what they're going with the official title. They'll probably switch it to something like Monster Hunter World, but yeah, right now it's in here as Monster Hunter 6. There is a new Onimusha game, which that should make some fans real excited.
Tell me about that. I don't know.
Onimusha is think Resident Evil meets Devil May Cry a little bit. You play as a samurai and fight against demons in like I think mostly in ancient Japan,
Okay.
but I think the later one might have come to the west or like cities or the future. I don't remember. Onimusha did some weird things, but it's the original games were that kind of tank controls style of Resident Evil with fixed camera angles. But it was about using swords and stuff um on demons.
That's
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. It kind of looks like it reminds me of Ninja Gaiden.
Yeah, I mean not nearly as fluid controls, but
Sure.
yes. Yes, in tone and like subject matter, yeah, similar. And they did a remake of 1 not that long ago of Onimusha 1, and I don't think it did very well.
Okay.
So I'm actually kind of surprised that they're making a new one, but that's apparently set for Q4 2022. And I don't know if this title is right or if this is a typo in the article, but it says Onimusha New Work. Maybe they just mean like it's a new Onimusha, but
Okay.
I misread it at first as Onimusha New York and was like, oh man, New York, Onimusha, cool. So I don't know. I think it's just saying new Onimusha. Um, there's a Final Fight remake, which that sounds odd. I don't know if they're gonna try and make that another brawler or what, but that's 2024.
Okay.
So it's like 4 years out. They're planning a brawler remake. I don't know.
Okay.
And then the last, I think, kind of really interesting one is apparently for Q3 2024, they have a Power Stone remake, which I know a lot of fans of the Dreamcast originals have wanted for a very long time. Um,
Again,
that
you're gonna
feels
have to
way
tell me
too
about that
early.
one. I don't know the history.
Okay. Yeah, so Power Stone 1 and 2 were these games that came out on the Dreamcast. They're kind of a little bit think 3D Smash Bros. The first one was more of a traditional fighter, but in a 3D arena. Uh, Power Stone 2 was very much like a Smash Bros. Kind of thing in 3D. Um, eh, I've heard mixed opinions about whether or not these games hold up all that well today, but for the time they were fantastic. I played them myself a lot. I played a lot of Power Stone 1 and 2, and other than a collection that came out for the PSP, they haven't done anything with the franchise since the Dreamcast. There haven't been any new games since Power Stone 2 back in probably 2001, maybe 2000. Uh, and that's been sad because those games are fantastic. They're just wonky. They have cheesy like action characters based on a whole bunch of weird stereotypes. It kind of feels like a weird Indiana Jones meets anime, maybe a little bit.
Okay.
I recommend looking it up. It's kind of hard to describe, but the fighting was always really tight. Each character had special moves. It's called Power Stone because you would go and collect these Power Stones that would fall onto the map, and if you got 3 of them, you could transform into like a super mode. Yeah, it
Cool.
was a lot of fun. It was a really good party game.
Awesome. Uh,
Yeah.
well, that's there you go. If any of those things piqued your interest, then keep your ear out for them because again, it sucks the situation that this has kind of come out because a lot of people like to buy into the hype and the marketing and all that stuff and get excited for new games when they're coming out. And if you know about the fact that they're coming in advance, then maybe it ruins some of that surprise for you. But it is what it is, and certainly I mean, you can get excited in a whole different way because maybe you weren't necessarily expecting them to have all of these games in the works.
Yeah.
Capcom over the last couple of years has really been in this resurgence, right? Monster Hunter World and Resident Evil 7 and the remakes and all that stuff. They're doing much better now than they were a couple of years ago. So the fact that they're gonna, both culturally, like people are really happy with them, but also financially. Hopefully this is gonna continue to do well for them and people are gonna be happy.
Yeah, they have been seeing a resurgence. You're totally right. It's been great because honestly, Capcom after the NES, SNES era, they were having some trouble. They were struggling to get other than outside their major franchises like Resident Evil, they were having trouble, and then even those have been dropping in recent years. So it would be great to see that come back. Also, I guess I did forget one thing. I saw in one article, and I don't know if this is true or if this is um, maybe just a wish list thing because I haven't seen it since. But apparently they have new Phoenix Wright games coming next year, which would make sense. It's been a long time, and they have said that they've been working on Phoenix Wright games, but we haven't heard anything. But they did talk about Phoenix Wright 7 coming to Switch next year, and then also a translated collection of the 2 spin-off games, which I do not remember the Japanese titles off the top of my head, but they've apparently been translated as Great Ace Attorney, which, if you've followed that franchise, these are like, I believe Phoenix Wright's ancestor, who was a lawyer in like the 1800s.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and they've said the games have always been really good, but they've said it would be really hard to translate because of the localization and the culture. But allegedly, they are coming out with a collection of both games next year.
That's awesome.
We'll see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I think Ace Attorney also is. I feel like that's one of those games that it's like if you do Resident Evil well, it's gonna sell well, right? Evidently, if you do Monster Hunter well, it's gonna do well. And I think Ace Attorney is another one of those where there's just such a fan base for it. Where maybe it's not like super mainstream, but there's enough of a niche with Ace Attorney that it's like it's probably gonna be worth the development costs as long as it's competent.
Yeah, I love those games personally. I actually just played through all 6 of the main series not that long ago, maybe a year ago. And yeah, they are so good still to this day. So
Well,
I'll be
there.
really excited if they come out with 3 more next year. I will be so excited.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, well, there you go, folks. The next thing we want to talk about today is the Game Awards. So if you go over to thegameawards.com, you're going to see the nominees for all of this year's awards at the Game Awards, really. And again, if you don't know the game, I mean, I would be surprised if you don't, but the Game Awards is the annual Oscars for video games, essentially. It's the closest we have to a mainstream spectacle. So, the show itself, which is happening on, I believe, December 10th,
Yep.
It's usually actually less of a focus on the awards and more on the game announcements that they like to make and the advertisements that they need in order to fund the show. And the awards themselves typically are, if not, pushed a little bit to the side, then at least is not like the total focus of the show. But nonetheless, it is always fun to take a look at the nominees, see, what's been nominated for what, and we thought we could do a little bit of a discussion here. I figure we may as well just start with the headliner, right? The Game of the Year award. There's 6 nominees. So there's Doom Eternal, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Ghost of Tsushima, Hades, which is the indie game that, they have one slot for an indie game and Game of the Year every single year. This year it's Hades. Animal Crossing New Horizons, and The Last of Us Part 2.
I've never thought about it like that. I really hope that's not a real thing. I hope they're not like, this is the one indie nominee. That would be... Oh, I cringe.
Yeah,
but you're right. They have.
And it's pretty clear, like, at least, I mean, and maybe this year it would have been a little bit harder, but I think usually you find that there is just one indie game in that lineup, and I would imagine that's usually them tipping the hat, right? But nonetheless, I don't know. What do you think? Like, this lineup, I think, is really strong for especially the number of games that came out this year. The only suggestion that I've seen is that instead of Doom Eternal, it should be Half-Life Alyx. Which is currently in the VR slot. That's like when I look on what people are talking about on social media and stuff, they're saying, oh, Alyx should have had that slot. But otherwise, I mean, this is the all-star lineup of this year, I think.
Yeah, I agree with the Half-Life Alyx, but I would actually replace Ghost of Tsushima personally with Half-Life Alyx.
Oh, okay,
yeah, I do think Half-Life Alyx got real snubbed. And part of me is wondering too how much it would matter to nominate Half-Life Alyx, just because it's mostly based around voting from the public, and VR, for as rabid as those fans are of VR, it is still a very niche product. Most people have still not played Half-Life Alyx. So I do kind of wonder if maybe they thought there's really no point in nominating it because it's not going to get the votes that it needs. Whether or not that's true, whether or not that's right, I don't know. But
well, I should clarify. So the winners of these awards are actually 90% of a voting jury, and then 10% is public fan voting.
Is it really that much? Okay, I knew there was a jury also, but I didn't realize it was that much of a split. Oh. Well, everybody vote so you can all be ignored.
Even then, though, like I'm sure the voting jury don't all have VR headsets, right? Like it's still at that level where it's not like everybody in the industry just has a VR headset. It's still a niche of its own.
Yeah, I do think they're more likely to have played it, or at the very least are able to go out of their way to get access to a VR headset to play it. If they're going to be voting on it. I don't know, when you're on a jury like that, if you have 6 games to play, I feel like that shouldn't be all that hard, but
fair enough.
Yeah, maybe.
So yeah, I don't know. What do you think here is okay, so let me tell you. So my perception of, because they never really give definitions for these awards, right? They have the headline and then they just, here's the winner. And, any kind of criteria that went into determining what the winner is, we're never really privy to that. My interpretation of the Game of the Year, even if it's not always reflected in the winner, for me personally, it always means both quality of game, but also cultural impact. You could have a really, really great game, but if it's not going to make some sort of impact culturally, financially, any kind of these things, then to me, that's not a Game of the Year, unless it's the most impactful. So when I look at this list, I'm like, okay, I'm sure a lot of people loved Final Fantasy VII Remake. Hades is my personal Game of the Year in terms of, how much I love it. But I think Animal Crossing needs to win Game of the Year, at least in my opinion, simply because of the timing that it came out, how many people bought Switches because of that stupid game. I think this game alone probably sold millions of Switches. And just it had an extreme cultural impact in terms of, at least compared to the rest of these. It hit the mainstream. So I don't know. That's my personal choice for what should win this.
Yeah, it's kind of that question that the Oscars goes through, right? Of how much popularity plays into something. Because I agree, if we're going based off of popularity, then Animal Crossing should 100% win. As far as best game of the year, just as somebody who spent lots and lots of time with Animal Crossing, and I would put it as one of my, maybe top three in these six games. I would not pick it over Hades or probably, from what I've heard anyway, probably Final Fantasy VII. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much that's going to play into their decision making.
Yeah, it's a very subjective thing, right? Like, I think if the Gaming Observer ever has like a formal, okay, we have a nomination process and we're going to announce winners, and all the news outlets usually have stuff like that. So I would love
Yeah.
if TGO has something like that one day if we're able to play all these games in a year. But I think definitely once we create those awards, there's going to be Game of the Year, which does include popularity, and then there's going to be like most outstanding game or some other tag on there, which is like just from a gameplay perspective, how fun is this game? Then I think that delineation is kind of important. But yeah, anyway, there you go. There's that's what we've got.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, these are all very good games from everything I've heard. I have not actually, unfortunately, gotten to play several of them, but like I've heard good things about Ghost of Tsushima, even though the reviews have been relatively low compared to the rest. It's one of those fascinating games where I've heard critics love it more over time. Like, I remember when it came out, it got a lot of, like, 7s and 8s, and those same critics who gave it those, 7s have been talking about it for months
Right.
and, like, saying how it's how fantastic it is. I've heard several of the, updates and DLC packs or whatever, I'm not sure if they're paid DLC or not, have been really impressive. Um, yeah, and then Last of Us Part 2 is a fascinating choice just because it's been so divisive.
Yeah, I mean it's one of the Last of Us Part Two. This is actually kind of the inverse of Ghost of Tsushima that you were just talking about, where Ghost of Tsushima went okay, it's okay or it's good to great, whereas Last of Us was a game that everybody went into it thinking The Last of Us Part One was maybe one of the best games I've ever played. They're gonna knock it out of the park with Part Two because there's gonna be an insane budget and everything like this, and then it ended up being like a Red Dead Redemption 2, where it's a very divisive, like they took a new approach to it, and it was either something people really loved or something people really didn't like, and had that very
Yeah,
big budget feel, right? And so I
there
think
were a lot of opinions.
yeah, there were for sure, and so I mean I think it makes sense to put it in Game of the Year simply because of the budget that went into it and the quality that can be deemed from it, but yeah, I don't know. It's certainly an interesting lineup. I'm really happy to see Hades. I think it getting what it deserves, because that's another game, kind of like Animal Crossing. It obviously didn't hit the super mainstream, but there were people in my social circles who were kind of aware of Hades just from the the viral videos of streamers reacting to the horniness of the characters and stuff. Like there were certain things that that ended up leaking into the main public. But yeah,
Yeah.
well, there you go.
Well, I just there was an article from, gosh, I'm gonna screw up who posted it. It was some mainstream outlet. It was like Time or someone. I'm sorry, I don't remember who. But a mainstream news outlet that actually posted an article a couple days ago about top 10 games to like top 10 escapism games or something to escape 2020. And they listed Hades as their best game. Um, and that was, I mean, that's a big deal. That's a really big deal. Then they listed this game, and they did put it over Animal Crossing New Horizons as like a top escapism game.
Yeah, it's for sure. It's been really cool to see that. I saw that as well, and I was just now trying to find it, and now I can't. But anyway, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You're totally right.
So, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. But I do love how it's the one indie game, and they do actually have a category in the Game Awards for like best indie game.
Yeah, so let's look at that one.
Um, yeah, I wonder
So
who's gonna win.
so in the lineup we've got Hades, Spelunky 2, Spiritfarer, Carrion, and Fall Guys. I honestly think, like, I do think, again, if it's not going to win Game of the Year, I think Hades probably should win Indie Game of the Year. But also, Fall Guys has taken the world by storm, and Spelunky 2, at least in terms of like the hardcore indie gamers, I mean, Spelunky 2 is it's the roguelike, you know? It's the
Yeah.
first Spelunky some people consider it the best game ever made. Like that's like a frequently repeated mantra of Spelunky, you know? So
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think Spelunky 2 has made the same splash that something like Hades and Fall Guys have, but certainly I think it's nice to see them there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and Spiritfarer is very, very good.
Is it?
Like
Have you played it?
I'm glad. Yes, I played it a little bit, not as much as I'd like to, but yeah, it's a beautiful game. Like that's really the only way to describe it is it's a beautiful game. So I'm excited. It does kind of irritate me on some level that Fall Guys and Carrion were nominated in Best Indie Game because they are objectively not independent. They are both published by Devolver. So, on some level, I'm kind of irritated that they were included in that, and I'm
Okay.
wondering why they were considered indie. But
I
I
mean,
guess
yeah, I guess you're
Devolver is
right in
still
terms of
considered indie.
publisher. Yeah, I
Yeah,
so,
they do have a publisher.
and there's certainly like indie as a term has kind of, you know, it started simply as if you don't have a publisher and you're doing it yourself or whatever, that, you know, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that was a very clear line in the sand, right? It was hard to make a video game if you didn't have a publisher, and therefore you were an indie. But now we're at this point where Fall Guys is a really small team, you know, and if is that enough to say that they're an indie, or is the budget enough to say that they're like, where's the
Yeah,
delineation there? Right. And certainly I think for the game awards, I think these make more sense if it was more of like what we do, or if it you know, a much more niche outlet that is looking at, you know, all of the games that have come out in 2020. Maybe these belong in a separate category, but where, you know, a one person game that is on a budget of a few $1,000s might have extraordinary gameplay that deserves to be on here, or whatever it is, right? But at least in terms of the spectacle and seeing games that you want to see, I think this makes sense.
yeah, no, it does, and you're right. Indie has like no meaning anymore. I still stand by indie means independent of publisher, but yeah, like they define it as made outside the traditional publisher system,
There you go.
which I'm not sure why Devolver is considered outside the
Right.
traditional publisher system, but I guess they are. And most people would look at Carrion and say indie game, but I think that's mainly because it's just not a AAA game.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
anyway, sorry, that's my own little like
No, it's
kind of
totally
thing.
fine. Let's look at another one here that I want to talk about. Best mobile game. Okay, so they
Oh
have
boy.
they have Legends of Runeterra and Pokemon Cafe Mix, which, as far as I'm concerned, are just in there to fill out the nominations. Because then they've also got Call of Duty Mobile, Genshin Impact, and Among Us. That isn't to put down Legends of Runeterra and Pokemon Cafe Mix. Legends of Runeterra is a fantastic game. Pokemon, I'm sure, is great. But
It's not.
again, Genshin, Call of Duty Mobile, Among Us. That is a hydra of games, and I don't know. I think again, you look at cultural impact. We're talking about this a lot. Among Us has hit the mainstream. It very
Yeah.
much has. You know, Genshin Impact in its own right, a different market. Maybe not as much on the Western market, but certainly it's done well. You know, so I don't know. What do you think?
If we're talking strictly about with mobile in particular, how impressive the game is on mobile, Genshin Impact should win 100%.
Agreed.
Like it is one of the most impressive mobile games I've ever played in my life. Like it's shocking that you can play a game like that on your phone. It feels like you're playing something on a Switch or whatever. It's
Yeah.
very impressive. But you're right. As far as cultural impact, I can't see anything beating Among Us. Like it's really impressive. I didn't realize that the mobile version did come out this year. I was kind of thinking about it with indie game, like, oh, Among Us should have been nominated, but it didn't come out this year. Um,
Actually, I think Among Us has been around for a couple of years. It's just that the Game Awards doesn't strictly stick to December 2019 to December 2020. It's basically games can reappear even if it came out like 10 years ago.
oh, I okay. Well, then I am surprised that it didn't get in indie games. Like, I guess I am surprised by that. I was figuring that, yeah, you're right, because the Android and iOS version came out in 2018 also. It actually came out before the Windows version. Yeah, then I have no explanation there.
Okay,
Um,
cool. Is there any other categories that you wanted to look at?
I always love seeing the best ongoing,
Hmm.
just because I think it's really impressive to see games from several years ago that are growing and evolving. And I don't think there's anything in these nominations that are all that surprising. We're seeing like Fortnite and Destiny 2, Apex Legends, Call of Duty Warzone, and No Man's Sky. Um, so I don't think there's anything that wasn't there last year. But I like this trend that the gaming industry has gone through, where a game can come out and still receive significant updates throughout its lifespan, and like many times become better than it was at launch, like become more impressive, have more of an impact, more of a sales tail. I think that's all great. So I
And
just
it,
always like looking at those.
Yeah, of course, and it makes sense, right? Like gamers before this games as a service thing was really popular, were playing the same game over and over again, right? Like there were some gamers that didn't do that, and many gamers that don't. But there are a lot of people that just played their sports game or just played
Yeah.
whatever it was. And so the fact that companies can now come in and actually embrace this and improve it over time is great. Seeing something like Fortnite, which has been out for a long time, No Man's Sky, which has really turned itself around,
Yeah.
to be able to come in here and say, "Hey, we're still doing a good job. Let's get an award for it." I think, of course, it's a wonderful thing. What do you think should win this in terms of what they've
Oh
done in the
man.
last year?
Best ongoing. Oh man, as far as the last year, I'm pretty sure it won't, but honestly, I really think No Man's Sky should. They have
Yeah,
come out with so many massive updates over the last year. It's incredible. Every single year that game becomes just completely different than it was the year before. So I mean, Fortnite and Apex Legends will uh probably have a lot of attention in this just because of the way they do seasons, but I think as far as unexpected goes, like, and that means something to me, No Man's Sky just continues to impress.
that's fair. Yeah, for sure. I think that there's something to say for Destiny 2. I don't know about the last
Mhm.
year. I don't know what they've been doing, but obviously, like, I think Destiny 2 has one of the strongest fan bases, right? Like, obviously,
It's fair.
Fortnite and Call of Duty and everything, there's a lot of players, but when you talk to a Destiny player, they're like, in with the lore and they've put in like thousands of hours and they're like you like I think the in terms of the veracity of players with Destiny is a big thing. And then Call of Duty Warzone, I mean, that was just a brilliant move on the side of Activision Blizzard. Like they release a Call of Duty every single year, and then they said, hey, let's just give you one that you can play all the time for free, and then they've made bucket loads of money off of that as well. So yeah, anyway, that's you can see the different monetization models there, even though it's all
Yeah.
games as a service.
Yeah. I mean, that's good. I'm glad that those games are out there. Yeah, and it's good that Warzone is being kind of spun off into its own separate thing. That's fantastic. Um, Otherwise, not a category, but I'm happy to see that Ori and the Will of the Wisps got nominated twice for best score in music and best art direction.
And highly deserved on both of those. I wish I saw more Ori in these nominations for sure.
Hmm.
But I'm really happy that it's at least there. I was also happy to see Crusader Kings 3 in the. I mean, you kind of have to expect it in the strategy nominations, but certainly it's well deserved in there, I think.
Yeah, and 13 Sentinels got a nod in best narrative.
Yeah, I saw that. I
Uh,
don't even know what it is.
no, it's just really obscure. At least maybe I just think of it as really obscure, but it's one of those anime games that I feel like usually just never gets any attention. I kind of see it in the same light that I saw like 999 come out several years ago. Um, it's just I don't know. It was like this PS3 or PS4 game that I didn't think was gonna get any attention, and it's been critically well received. I think it's all like nines and tens across the board, but um, I don't
That's
know.
awesome.
I'm just glad to see that it came out and actually gets a nod.
So let me get your impressions on this as well. Uh, in terms of the amount of nominations, right? So we just talked about some games that have gotten a few nominations across multiple categories. In terms of who has gotten the most nominations in the various categories, there's The Last of Us Part Two, which has been nominated for 10 different categories, Hades for 8 different ones, and then Ghost of Tsushima for 7. That is it's like, again, this is what I was saying about The Last of Us Part 2. Like, they put so much of a budget into basically every aspect of that game that now you're seeing it pop up, right? Best sound, best art director, whatever, best director, like the best performance as well. Ghost of Tsushima is in there as well, and Hades is in there as well. Like, it's interesting that these games can do so well that they're just performing not just super well in one category, but so many different aspects.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's I just noticed that Persona 5 Royal didn't get nominated in Best Art Direction, and now I'm really bummed.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, is there any
Sorry.
games that you felt like were missing? But there's one.
Yeah, I mean that's yeah. I don't know. When The Last of Us Part 2, Ghost of Tsushima, and Final Fantasy 7 Remake all got Best Art Direction, I feel like Persona 5 Royal was more impressive than all of them. But maybe that's just because it's the same as Persona 5 Original,
Fair.
which I know was nominated in that category.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, I mean a lot of these games deserve the multiple nods. You know, like Ori absolutely deserve well, Ori and Hades both deserve the art direction and sound and music. Like both of those, I don't know. I almost wish that they had come out separate years strictly because I want both of them to win in both categories because they're both so incredible. Uh, I don't know. Art direction is one I always feel like should go to an indie game. I feel like the AAA is just too it's not that it's unimpressive. Like, you know, you look
Well,
at games like Red Dead Redemption 2 and Last of Us that are just gorgeous, but seeing that artistic, that avant-garde style is
I think that's what art direction should be, right? Like,
yeah.
it's taking that's what I mean. Okay, this is what art is, right? It's your interpretation of a specific medium. We see it in I come from a background of theater, and it's like, yes, you could just do
Yeah.
Shakespeare again, or you could do Shakespeare and it's theater of the absurd where everybody's talking gibberish and they're playing instruments. You know, that to me is way more interesting. And so,
There you
you know,
go.
that could come from a AAA studio or an indie. I think it's just more likely that an indie does something like that. If you're looking at best art direction, you've got Final Fantasy VII Remake, Ghost of Tsushima, Hades, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, and then The Last of Us. And yeah, I look at
Mhm.
that list and I'm like, Ori has to get it. Like, that game is just so extraordinarily beautiful. It's got this very painting-like esque visuals compared to another hyper-realistic game. I mean, we've seen it 100 times.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
so that's the Game Awards. Folks, if you're listening, feel free to write in with your own opinions. We would love to hear what you have to say. And then, of
Yeah.
course, the show's happening on December 10th, so we might do another. We're probably going to do a show rundown of that, actually, and let you know how things go. Next thing I want to talk about here is something, and then we're going to talk about the games that we've been playing. We'll address this really quickly, but IO Interactive, who are the developers of Hitman, the old games and the new ones, but especially the new ones after they've split off and become their own company, no longer owned by Square Enix. Hitman 2 and 3. So Hitman 3 is coming out in February, and then their next project, which is, you know, that's going to be the end of the rebooted Hitmans for now. Their next project after that is going to be James Bond. So James Bond is returning to video games, and you know, we talked a while ago about how perfect Larian Studios is for Baldur's Gate 3, right? Baldur's Gate 3 has been gone forever. People want it to come back. Who's going to handle that monumentous task of living up to the community expectations? It's a little bit different with James Bond. I mean, there are people clamoring for it, but it's not the same as Baldur's Gate, I would say. But if James Bond is coming back, who do you want to handle it? The people who have been making assassin games for the last forever. The people who have been
Yeah.
perfecting exactly the type of game that you're looking to make. So I'm
Certainly more
extremely
than
happy.
Activision.
Yeah. So this is it's just a teaser so far. We don't know what it is, but it's codenamed Project 007, and IO Interactive is making it. I'm super excited to see it.
Yeah. Do you think it's gonna be like a Hitman thing? Do we think it's gonna be like massive replayability, go through the levels different ways, and
I don't know. Like, I don't have a deep history with the 007 games. I know that, like, you know, GoldenEye was a multiplayer first-person shooter, right? So it depends on what they want to do with these games. But I don't know. I think it would be cool, but also I do want them to step away from Hitman, I think. And if they can put another spin on it that gives it a little bit different core gameplay loop, that'd be cool.
you know, though, I feel like it would be different enough where they take some of the same uh architecture, I guess, the foundation for Hitman, but more focused on Bond's ability to use gadgets to get in
Yeah.
different ways. And it's more about stealing something or like getting information. Just making it more of a Bond game rather than Hitman, I feel like is enough there that it would be different enough to have its own identity. And maybe that's wrong, and I'm sure they're going to look at it, but I'm just thinking of the same thing, Larian with Baldur's Gate 3. Like it does have the foundation of Divinity Original Sin very, very much. But if you actually go in and, don't just look at the screenshots, but you go in and actually play Baldur's Gate 3, it is absolutely its own thing. It does not feel like just a copy of
Right.
Divinity Original Sin 2. Um, so I don't know. I'm kind of thinking if IO will do the same thing or if they'll do something completely different. I don't
I,
know.
I think there's something to be said about the narrative as well. Like, I think most
Yeah.
people, like, Hitman is very much like build the level first and then build the story around it, right? And I
Mhm.
think what they could, like, what I could definitely see, most people who play Hitman aren't necessarily really paying that close attention to the story, right? You're
Sure.
you're there to kill people by dropping a toilet on them. James Bond, on the other hand, I think it has a much stronger narrative presence, right? Especially because there's this whole movie aspect to it. And so if they can
Sure.
turn it into a, hey, we're going to make a really strong campaign narratively, and then you can replay it if you want to, I think that would be a good way to kind of spin it.
Though GoldenEye in particular was known for the way they made levels, which was like Hitman.
Oh,
They
okay.
they made their levels first and wanted to make these realistic environments and then put the objectives in after the fact. And it gave it this very realistic sense where you could walk into rooms in GoldenEye that have absolutely no gameplay purpose, but they're there because it would make sense for that weird evil base to have a bathroom in, things like that. And there were games that emulated that. I don't know if you ever played like the Time Splitters games, but they definitely emulated that level style. Um, I don't know. So I feel like it would fit really
Well,
well with
there you go.
at least the James Bond kind of legacy. But then again, yeah, do they need to stick to the legacy? I mean, I don't think there've really been any James Bond games since GoldenEye that have at, at least had that level of success. So sticking to that is probably not the best way to go. Yeah, I don't
We'll see what
know.
they do. I
We
trust
will
them to at
see.
least experiment, right? Because we've seen so much Hitman from them in the last little while. This is going to be their first non-Hitman game since breaking out from Square Enix. I'm excited
Yeah.
to see what they do with it for sure.
Absolutely, and it's great that it is not specifically tied to a movie.
Yes.
I feel like that usually winds up hampering games more
Yep.
than it helps. They have such a legacy to pull from. They have all these different bonds, all these different movies that they can take inspiration from, but they're not tied to anything in particular. I think that's going to help them significantly.
I will also say they have said that this is going to be an original story, so
Mm,
that's
good.
probably what they're going to do. They're going to have their own Bond. But I did see this one suggestion. I forget where, but I thought it was brilliant. Where they could make like their own missions based on the movies,
Mhm.
different Bonds, the different eras, and because they have such a huge history. These films with all these different actors that have played such this iconic role. If they had
Yeah.
made like a few levels for each of those eras, I think that would be so cool in like a Hitman style.
They did have a game that came out, 007 Legends. I think it was for the Wii, that did a similar kind of thing. So I would want them to have their own identity from that, but I do agree there's so much that can be done there. Way more than 007 Legends just did by itself.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would not be opposed at all to like levels based on different eras of Bond. That would be fantastic.
Okay, with 7 minutes to go, why don't we talk about the video games that we've been playing? It's been a month, so what's the most exciting thing that you've played in the last month?
Yeah, so actually I haven't been playing a whole ton just because of how busy it's been. But I did start playing Wander Song, which is this indie game from a few years ago. You it's a side scroller and you play as a bard who decides he's going to save the world because the world's going to end. And it is this bright, cheerful game. It is
Very
just
colorful.
absolutely, yes, it is so colorful. You do not fight anything. The entire game is based around musical notes and singing and dancing. And it sounds really dumb, but it kind of has a tone almost like the cartoon Adventure Time is
Yeah,
kind of what it feels
yeah,
like
it's
to
very
me.
cartoony. Yeah,
Yeah, and the writing is just wonderful. It is hilarious. I have been laughing out loud numerous times throughout that game. And yeah, the whole crux of the game is when you move like your right joystick in different directions, you can sing different music notes, 8 different music notes, and each chapter of the game uses this in wildly different ways. So, if you go certain places in the first area, you can sing, and the notes will have colors associated with them, so it will change the colors of things around you, and you can do that to solve puzzles. There's another section where you're steering a boat and you sing in the different directions in order to steer the boat while these pirates sing like sea shanties.
That's cool.
It is so good. It is so beautiful. And it's just with how crazy this month has been, I think worldwide, I absolutely needed something that was just this hilarious level of happy and
Yeah.
dumb. I don't want to say dumb. It's not dumb. It's very well written. The story is maybe a little bit deeper than you'd expect just looking on the surface. I highly recommend it to anybody. It's out on everything, so I highly recommend it to pretty much everybody.
Awesome. Well, there you go. I'm happy to hear about that. Yeah, if you look at the images, it's very striking. Lots of
Mhm.
colors there, and definitely the description that you've just provided seems to match up with what I saw. So that's cool.
Yeah. How
Okay,
about
yeah.
you?
It's been for me. It has been largely uneventful because of this essay that takes all of my time. I talked about it on the show today, but mostly it's been like these games where I can just turn my brain off and not think for a little bit. I've been playing a lot of Skate 3 because EA Play is now available on the Xbox Game Pass. That's the EA subscription service. All of the back catalog for EA is now on the Xbox Game Pass. Ridiculous value. That means I now have access to Skate 3 once again, which I played a whole bunch as a teenager. And so that's a game that I've just been like, when I've been writing an essay for 4 hours and I'm like, oh my God, I need to do something else, I would just go play Skate 3 because then I didn't have to think about anything. You just skate around the world and do nothing. So that's been what a lot of my life has been. I've also been playing Zuma similarly because you just put the colors together, and that's all you have to worry about. Match red with red. I can do that, no problem. So yeah, it's been a lot of that. However, every Tuesday now, my best friend, I was mentioning before, my best friend has re-entered the gaming world for, he's realizing that he's been not talking to a lot of people because of this social isolation stuff, and he's like, I'm in a funk, so we need to play some games every week. And I said, you know what, my best friend, this is the first time in my life that he has taken the initiative to say, let's play some video games. It's always been me chasing him because I'm the gamer, right? Like that, I'm always wanting to, hey, let's play some games. And then they go, this is the first time he's come to me. So let's play games every week. I was like, heck yeah. So even through all the nonsense of my essay, I selfishly carved some time away to play games with him. And I want to tell this to you because I don't know if you've played Halo recently. We've been playing Halo Combat Evolved.
Nice.
Anniversary, right through the Master Chief Collection. Oh my God, that game is repetitive.
Oh, you don't like it anymore?
We loved it as kids, and I don't remember it as a child, but I just know that I played it when I was a child. We were playing through these levels, and I don't know, like everything was so repetitive. It was like cookie cutter. At least the one level that we played, that I got to a point that I thought the game was glitched. I thought that we were like on an endless loop. There was literally like outside sequence, inside sequence, outside sequence, inside sequence, like 5 times, and we're like, are we missing something here? Like, what's going on? And then eventually we got to the end, and we're like, I can't do that again. So we just moved to Halo 2, and everything was better. But yeah,
Ouch.
Halo CE was hard to get through.
I don't think there has been a game I have played through the campaign as many times as Halo Combat Evolved.
Really?
I have played, like, I had an Xbox when I was a kid, and Halo was the first M game my parents let me get. I was so excited. Um, but yeah, no, I'd bring people over, and I had to play through it with every person, and I played through it myself, solo a few times. I absolutely love that
Oh,
campaign.
oh, there you go.
Yeah, just I know, just the sniper sequence in level 3. I just love that bit, and driving around. I really love driving in those games, so I always drive that. My buddy, I know you've seen TB on Twitter. But my buddy TB and I played it recently for an Extra Life a couple years ago. Um, and I gotta say, playing it straight through after a 24-hour marathon was maybe not the best way to experience that game. But it still wasn't until like I think second to last level that I started losing it a little bit. But
Okay, folks.
bummer.
There you go. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us here on TGO Radio. Kato, if people would like to find more from you, where should they go?
Best place right now to go is on Twitter or Instagram at VG_of the day. I am trying to get back to video game of the day. I know several people have been asking me about that recently, and I do really want to get back to it. I'm taking it week by week. I just haven't had the time to devote to it. So I'd be missing I'd do it one day and then miss like 4. So I just haven't wanted to do that. But I am hoping to get back to it really soon. But for right now, Twitter, Instagram at VG_of the day.
All right, folks, there you go. TheGamingObserver.com for all the links that you need. Otherwise, that's going to do it. Thanks so much for joining us, and until next time, happy gaming, everyone.
Happy gaming, everyone.